You are now listening to the IELTS podcast. Learn from tutors and ex-examiners who are masters of IELTS preparation. Your host, Ben Worthington.
IELTS Band 8 vocabulary and using collocations. This tutorial focuses entirely on collocations and vocabulary. We're going to look at the 6 types of collocations. We're going to look at how to use these collocations. There's 4 different ways you can use them and why you should use them. And then I'm going to give you 3 very valuable tips that are useful if you're going for a band 8 or higher. Now, why are collocations useful? Well, collocations, I'll just go into this very briefly, then I'll explain the 6 types. Collocations are important, not only for your writing, but for your speaking. When you're using a lot of collocations in your spoken English, it will give the effect of your language flowing, of your words flowing. Because when I start a collocation, I'm already, or my brain as a listener, or the listener, is expecting the other side, the other half of the collocation. Also, we use them in context, which is another way that we sound more natural. So if I'm talking about McDonald's, and then I say McDonald's is a type of fast food restaurant, okay? You're expecting the word restaurant. And because you're expecting it, I don't have to pay that much attention or as much attention because my brain's processed and it's already anticipating the other half of the collocation. And this principle works exactly the same when we're writing. It makes the writing flow much easier as well. So this is why they're important. Now let's have a look at the 6 different types of collocations. So we've got adjective, noun, and illegal product. Illegal is the adjective, noun, and the noun is product. An illegal product. We can also say a counterfeit product. When I was younger, actually, I used to love counterfeit products. But then I realized they usually don't last more than 2 minutes. And anybody who's bought counterfeit products probably realizes that. Anyway, number 2, adverb adjective. Technically impossible. Technically, obviously the adjective is impossible. Technically impossible. Number 3, noun. Night shift. Shift is a period of work. So I'm going to work the night shift tomorrow in the factory. The factory is located in the enterprise zone. What's an enterprise zone? This is an area of a city or a country where the companies receive special tax advantages. So if you manufacture there, you're going to get tax advantages or tax benefits. 2 more collocations there. Number 4, verb noun. Verb noun. So I can say take an exam, fail an exam, prepare for an exam. Verb noun. Number 5, adverb verb. We can say comment regularly or ease tension. For example, a lot of students comment regularly on the IELTSPodcast.com site because it helps them to ease their tension with regard to preparing for the exam. Anyway, number 6, slightly longer phrases with a combination of words. So we can say, make a contribution towards something. So number 6, just longer phrases with combinations, with a combination of words. Now, I'm going to show you 4 ways of learning these collocations that can help you improve your English. So we can have number 1, which is new meanings and uses for the words that we've already learned. This is a very efficient way of improving your vocabulary because you're not actually learning new words, you're just learning new uses, employing the same word but in different cases. For example, maybe you've learnt the word harbour. Harbour is a place, a sheltered area of water for ships. And usually it's like a parking space, a parking lot, a car park for ships, basically. Okay, but we can also use the word harbour to provide shelter. So you can say it's a crime to harbour criminals. It's a crime to harbour a fugitive who's running away from the police. Okay, and harbour in this means to provide shelter for. We can also say that we can harbour negative feelings. You could say Ben harbours a grudge against this local sports centre. Yeah? So it just basically means to keep negative feelings inside of you. All right, a very good example is distribution. So we've got distribution as a noun, and it basically means giving things out to people, yeah, or spreading or supplying something. We could say that the Channel Tunnel between England and France, the tunnel, has improved the distribution of goods. Now, we can also use distribution as a verb. This is where it gets interesting, because this is also useful for academic task 1. We can say that the map is showing the distribution of the global population, or Sweden has aimed for a more equitable distribution of wealth. Here we've got the example of distribution 1 as a noun and the second as a verb. And as I said before, this is a very efficient way of learning. And if you want a very practical tip, you can go to the Cambridge Online Dictionary, and when you're searching for words there, you can find, sometimes it's got a C1 or a B2 or C2 next to the word in the corner, and this means that it's the equivalent of band 9. And C1 is probably the equivalent of band 8.5. I'm not going to go into the equivalency here. I've talked about it on past podcasts. But this is quite useful, especially if you're aiming for a band 9. And while we're talking about band 9, have a look for the academic word list. This was a research document, or the product of a research document, where they basically put in all the academic research papers, not all, but a lot of them. They put them into a big machine, and then it found out the most common words used in these formal academic papers. And if you search online, I think you can find it at victoria.ac.nz, and just put in academic word list into Google, and you'll find this list, and it's separated into the most common ones. And the most common ones are analysis, approach, area assessment, and not surprisingly, distribution is also in the top 20 of those words, of the most common academic words found in academic literature. So that's extremely useful. Anyway, the other advantage of using these collocations is that it will help you to avoid making mistakes. This is attainable because if you've got the collocation, then you're not going to use a second-rate word choice. Let me give you an example. So if you're writing your essay, and you might say something like, home tourism is important in England because it provides an income to the coastal areas of Britain. Now, I understand you if you say home tourism, but if you'd have said domestic tourism, then there's no strain there. It just goes back to what I was saying before. There's no strain. I don't have to put any effort into understand you. If you say domestic tourism, as a native speaker, I instantly know that you're talking about tourism that basically comes from England itself and stays in England. It's domestic tourism. So if we know the correct collocation, we can avoid mistakes. And this brings me on to the next one. If we're using the collocation and we're using it effectively, then probably we are able to say it more precisely. I'll give you an example. So I could say something like, there is no doubt that online advertising affects our moods and tastes. There is no doubt that online advertising affects our moods and tastes. That's fine. Now, if I could say significantly affect, then I've kind of emphasized it and I've improved the precision of what I want to say. So I could say, or the accuracy of what I wanted to say. Say, there is no doubt that online advertising significantly affects our moods and tastes. So it just makes it a little bit more precise. Now, the other advantage of learning the collocations is that, and this is especially useful for the students who struggle with speaking, but if we learn the collocation, then we can kind of push the actual grammar rule to the back. Now, I did this a lot when I was learning Spanish. And I would just remember entire phrases in Spanish. And I wasn't aware of the grammar, but I knew the phrase. And then afterwards I could deconstruct it. And I like, okay, that's the subconjunctive or whatever it was. And this also, it helps you to sound more natural if you just learn the whole phrase or the whole collocation. Now, one of these sort of like patterns, or one of these collocations could be adverb adjective. So I could say, it's ridiculously easy. And this is the adverb and the adjective. I can also say passing IELTS with Ben's online course was ridiculously easy, and most students are highly successful. You see, adverb adjective. And just by remembering that structure, highly successful, ridiculously easy, strongly opposed. I mean, we don't have to learn the grammar rule behind it, but learning those phrases, I think, is relatively easy. And once we know that kind of structure, it's easy just to learn more of them. And plus, they kind of flow. So strongly opposed. The Conservative government was strongly opposed to the new regulations. You see? So we can use it not only in a informal spoken session. I found passing IELTS ridiculously easy. We can also use it in our formal academic writing, as the example I just gave you. Most governments are strongly opposed to immigration, for example. Now then, I'm going to give you 3 tips for getting a band 8. Number 1, before you start writing, think of the vocabulary. Okay? This way, it's much easier if you've got, 3 or 4 good collocations that come to mind when you're thinking about that exact topic, the essay question topic. You can bend your essay or build your essay around using these terms. Now, this is useful because, as I said before, it's not really the quality of the ideas that count for your essay. It's the quality of your communication, because after all, this is a language exam. Communication is paramount. So if we can think of our vocabulary terms before and then organize our argument around these terms, we're on a good track. Now, I just want to repeat that we still have to make the argument logical, cohesive, coherent, and we still obviously have to respond to the task, i.e. task response. Obviously, the argument still has to be realistic. We can't just base the whole essay around these collocations and the vocabulary we've just learnt. Obviously, it has to be in context, it has to be reasonable. However, if we think of the terms beforehand and then think of an argument, and don't be afraid just to sacrifice some of the terms. It's better just to go for the terms that fit naturally into the argument than try and bend the whole essay so you incorporate these terms. But what I'm saying is just put down some of the vocabulary that comes to mind and don't worry about sacrificing some of the terms. It's better to go for clarity than try and bend the whole essay around. Okay, the next one, number 2. Tip number 2 is repetition. Sometimes a word that we've learnt recently will keep on repeating itself in the essay. So you need to be aware when you are reviewing your work or when you're editing your work, and try and look for synonyms. Also, you can also look for poor or basic vocabulary and look for higher level. So I'll give you an example. You could say pollution is very bad in the UK. Or you could say pollution is a significant issue in the UK. And it's quite obvious which is the most significant. Which sounds the most eloquent. So the final tip before we go is, if you can't find a synonym, if you can't find one, then just try and use the same word but in a different form. So if you were talking about tourists and the tourists causing a lot of problems in the coastal areas, in the harbours, for example, we could talk about the tourism causing a significant problem on the harbours and the coast. So this way we can improve our vocabulary. We can show the examiner that we've got different forms, that we've got an extensive lexical resource. So that's everything that I wanted to share today about collocations, about vocabulary. And if you're serious about improving your essays and you want to get to the next level, then go and have a look at IELTSPodcast.com. We've recently updated the site so it looks a little bit better, and navigating the site should be easier too. And you can go there, sign up for the email newsletter where you get lots of tips, lots of advice. And also, why not have a look at the essay correction service and the online course. Okay, my name is Ben Worthington, and good luck with your IELTS preparation.
Thanks for listening to IELTSPodcast.com.